Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Hi, I'm Judy Howard with Business Operations and Customer Experience here at ARC, and we've got a really exciting webinar topic here with us this afternoon, managing credit card payments, 3 things you should know. So we have an expert panel here from our employees here at ARC, our staff, who have come with us, who come with a lot of knowledge. I'm just going to introduce them all before we get started with the webinar, and as always, with our webinar sessions, you'll be able to ask questions throughout. There'll be the control panel on the right-hand side. You'll all be muted through the call, but please ask questions throughout the session, and we're going to try to get to them all. And as always, the ones we don't get to, we will address after the webinar individually. So again, let me start with introducing Joseph Kavanaugh. He's our Director of Payment Products here at ARC. He leads the development and execution roadmap for payment solutions. Joseph brings more than 20 years of expertise in electronic payments and merchant services. Prior to joining ARC, he was Director of Product Integration as well as Client Services, and he's worked for multinational business solution providers. So he comes to ARC with a lot of experience. Also here, a veteran here at ARC, we have Alex Kyle, who many of you have probably interacted with at either some of our events or Travel Connect, or actually called Alex and talked to him on the phone directly. He's been with ARC for over 25 years. So he brings a lot of experience to this product. He has been the manager of the TASF program, which many of you know as, well, it's Travel Agency Services, which we call AKA TASF, sorry about that. Then we have Sherry Simmons with us here on the panel, and she's been managing the TASF business operations for more than 15 years. And her staff is very knowledgeable and very efficient and effective in what they do. And you probably, if you have been in our TASF program for a while, you have probably talked to some of them. So before we get started, again, I just want to make sure you guys ask your questions in the panel on the right-hand side, and you can ask those anytime throughout the presentation. We're going to be doing a few polls as well this afternoon, so just bear with us. And without further ado, Alex.
Thank you. We advance to the second slide. There we go. Okay. Well, I think that's the first slide.
That one.
That one.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Here's our agenda. One of the first times, well, you've already actually been introduced to the panelists, but Joseph and Sherry will also have an opportunity to speak, so you'll be hearing their voices later. We're going to cover 3 things you need to know about credit card payments. We'll go through some use cases, how agents are using credit cards and using our product, how to get the most out of credit card payments, and if you're using ARC, how to do that through ARC and our TAP product, which you should be expecting from a credit card processor, and chargebacks and fraud and things of that nature, and what's coming in the future for TAP. Alrighty. But first, we've got a poll question. Let me read that to you here in a second. Okay. For which travel-related products and services do you accept credit cards currently? For airfares, for service fees, or professional fees, however you want to call those, deposits on travel, tours, cruises, and you can select all that apply. And we'll give you a few seconds here to vote. Generally, it's been our experience, agents will charge for any and all of those things, but depending on the agency business model, you may focus more on one thing than another.
And Alex, people are still voting.
Okay.
We'll keep this open for a few more seconds. And thank you for everyone for participating. We appreciate that. We'll just give it a couple more seconds. There's still people voting.
Okay.
Okay.
About 75% of folks have.
Yep.
And can we display the results?
Yeah, we're going to close this down now, and we're going to tell you, share with what everyone's voted.
Okay. That's about what I was expecting. Yeah, a lot of, obviously, for airfares and, service fees. Naturally, I'd like to see, based on my interaction with travel agents, I'd like to see that number be about 100%, but 89% is a good number as well. And the rest of the numbers are self-explanatory. Okay, thank you very much for participating. Let's go on. Okay, but before we get into this, I'm going to take a step back and just see why ARC and our TAF product, why we're in this space in the first place. I've been with ARC's TAF product since its inception almost 25 years ago. And the reason we got into this, as some of you who perhaps been in the business a long time recall a time when agents received basically a 10% commission on the base fare of an airline ticket. Roughly, I guess it was in early '95 when carriers started capping and ultimately pretty much eliminated those basic commissions. Travel agents still wanted to sell air, but they needed for it to be a profitable experience for them. But the problem they had was on pretty much all the transactions they did up to that point, somebody else was the merchant of record, the airline, the hotel, the cruise company. So, on top of that, the industry then, and still to some extent now, views travel agents or travel professionals as a high-risk proposition for accepting credit cards. So travel agents needed a way to accept a credit card for their own fees, their own charges, and ARC wanted to assist in that. So we stepped in and established credit card merchant accounts with Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Discover, UATP, et cetera, and allowed agents to process transactions through us. Anyway, that's the whole history of the program in a nutshell. But and since then, since 1995, we've been doing this a long time, and we have seen a lot. And here are just some ideas as to how travel agents are using our product. Ancillary travel products. I'm not going to read through the whole list, but travel consultation, service fees, trip planning, custom itineraries, and there at the bottom has been an exceptionally popular item among travel agents. Consolidator tickets. Travel agents want to assist their customers in affordable travel, and often that means consolidator tickets. Consolidators generally want to be paid in cash. The traveling public, your customers, want to pay with a credit card, and travel agents that use the TAF product have been stepping in with TAF and using TAF to bridge that gap, charging the customer via TAF, collecting the funds, and then passing that cash on to the consolidator. We've got some typical use cases. We generally have 5 typical, basically, verticals, types of agents within our product. And there is for sure some overlap here. With traditional travel agents, we see them using it for everything under the sun. Ticketing fees, consultation fees, cruise deposits, plan to go, consolidator tickets, all those things that I've mentioned. Below that, we also have, perhaps some of you are, or at least familiar with our VTC program, Verified Travel Consultants. These are ARC agents, but they're not accredited ARC agents in that they don't issue airline tickets. However, these are still travel professionals. They're probably associated with a host agency for the handling of the airfare portion of their business, but they still needed a mechanism to charge for their own fees and charge for their own packages that they've put together. And we do have an avenue open to them, which we'll get to later, but we do have a mechanism for them to access the TAF product.
Hey, Alex,
yes.
I have a question that's come in.
Please.
This one says, can we charge our company's credit card for all tickets instead of using our clients? The reason they're stating this is to avoid chargebacks from the clients to the airlines. It's something that they can't control. For some passengers, try to, get away with not paying for the ticket. So is that something that?
Well, I've got some. Well, I don't want to answer a question with a question, but obviously I need some more. I would need more information on that. I guess if the customer is the customer paying cash? I guess, is the customer paying cash to the travel agent, and the travel agent is then using their own personal credit card or a business card to charge the airline ticket? I believe to do that, you need specific authorization from the airline to use your own credit card. Otherwise, if the client is paying with cash, you are required to pass that cash on to the carrier as a cash transaction.
Yeah, and I think, and great, Alex, and I think the other side of it would be if they are taking in their customer's credit card, but they feel the customer may do a chargeback, that they're using their own.
Right.
Well, I mean, something that's a practice that
I wouldn't recommend that. If the customer is going to charge it back, they're going to charge it back regardless of who the merchant is, whether say the carrier, the airline is the merchant, or the travel agent is the merchant. If you are charging your customer's card via TAF, or if you already have your own merchant account, if you're doing it that, you are owning the risk on that transaction. You've got the exposure on that, and you'll get the chargeback instead of the carrier. I wouldn't recommend in that sort of scenario. If the customer is tendering a credit card for an airline ticket, I would go through traditional process it as usual.
Great, Alex, thanks. And again, if it's a cash transaction, they would really need to check with the...
Sure, you need to, exactly.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Alex.
You're welcome. And the other verticals we have, travel management companies, I'm sure you're familiar with them, but primarily they use our product for simply the ticketing fees, basically issuing an airline ticket and applying a service fee on top of it. Consolidators, reselling airline tickets, we've talked about that briefly already, and this is another, CTDs, corporate travel departments, we've found this to be a relatively popular product, or TAF to be a relatively popular product among them. They're charging, it's a business that's charging their own employees a fee for the issuance of airline tickets, but they do that to allocate expense within the organization. But in all of these instances, we found that regardless of the vertical, these are agents that need a mechanism to accept a credit card as a form of payment on a service, on a transaction, even if from transactions in just low dollar service fee type transactions up into the transactions that are in the thousands of dollars. They're not looking to use one merchant account for one type of transaction and a different merchant account for a different type. Progress. All right, give a little overview of the TAF product itself. And in all cases, as TAF works, we're essentially, it's an airline ticket where ARC is the carrier code, or ARC is the carrier of record on the transaction. And that's how TAF works. We set ourselves up as an airline within our own system. Say American Airlines, you're familiar with them and their carrier code of 890. United is, their carrier code is 001. United is 016. ARC's carrier code is 890 with a two-digit code of XD. And these transactions flow through ARC just like any airline ticket. And all of these transactions today are issued primarily through a GDS. But for those agents that don't have a GDS and don't wish to use a GDS, they can process them through our web-based application, which is called Agent's Choice. Otherwise, like I said, they go through Sabre, one of the Travelport GDSs, or through Amadeus. We accept all major credit card brands, Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Discover, JCB, and UATP. We do, you can process up to $10,000 per transaction. Again, because the product is not designed despite the fact that we called it travel agency service fees, it's not exclusively for travel agency service fees. You can process up to $10,000 for some of those scenarios I described previously, such as FITs, consolidator tickets, etc. And we have flat rate pricing, simple pricing that everybody can understand.
Okay, great, Alex. Before we move on, can
Sure.
I just interject another question?
Sure.
This one is an interesting one. Is there a way to connect a credit card reader machine to swipe a card and have it charged via ARC so that it's not just entered and considered a card or not present transaction?
Hey, this is Joseph. I'll go ahead and take that one. So we don't actually have that option today, but we are obviously looking to expand, which we're going to touch on a little bit more later in the presentation around our Agent's Choice product. Traditionally, most of the transactions are processed card not present, usually over the phone or over the web on some sort of website or what have you. So, but if card present functionality is something that our agencies need, of course, we're looking to build, solutions that can make that possible. And given my past experience, something like that would not be very difficult for us to build. It would just be a matter of where that falls in terms of priority and how relevant that would be to the masses in terms of our agencies needing that functionality. It's a good question, though.
Yeah, it is a good one. And Joseph, before we kind of leave you, I think this one maybe dovetails into that a little bit. In the future, do you foresee like BTCs, OTAs, whatever type of agency it is, to be able to use TASF via an API instead of a GDS?
Yeah, I will say we can hold off on this question until later in the presentation because we do have an entire section about APIs.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Alex, we'll continue on.
Okay, sounds good. Let's go on to the next slide. And benefits of the TAF product. There's no additional setup or training. Generally, the vast majority of TAF transactions are generated out of a GDS. Agents are already working in their GDS and know how to drive a transaction there, so there's nothing new to learn there. TAF ARC accredited agents already have access to TAF. There's not a separate agreement that needs to be signed. There's no other fees to be paid for setup. TAF transactions are integrated in the GDS and your back office system, and we consistently hear from TAF users how important that is to them, how important the ability to have the revenue from that recognized in their back office accounting system. Transactions settled directly as part of your regular weekly ARC report. And as you know, if you're submitting an ARC report, it's one report per week. You don't have to do a separate report. There's not for TAF transactions. You don't have to access a separate entity or organization for your credit card processing. It all goes through a single point of basically it's one-stop shopping. Additional benefits, we don't charge any additional fees, separate fees, such as PCI. We don't have an annual fee. We don't have statement fees. We don't have card brand fees. Again, talk about the flat rate pricing. Personal guarantees, bank reserves, we generally don't do that. We don't require, for the vast majority of agents that are using the TAF product, it's not a requirement. We do have a chargeback assistance team that can assist with any chargebacks that and obviously that's the vast minority of TAF users ever have to experience, ever have to work with Sherry and her team. But should you happen to have a chargeback, she's there to assist you. And some value-added features. Again, one-stop shopping. We accept all the cards, including UATP. UATP is a surprisingly popular card in the business. I had not ever heard of it until I got into this business, but it is a significant percentage of our overall volume. And we also, for those of you that are interested and are using TAF, we do have, and this will get a little bit into the weeds, we do have a flexible agency name, information on the credit card statement, where we can work with you to.
Yeah, it looks like that question actually came in. So on the questions around flexibility of the statement. So yeah, we do have some flexibility on what we can list on the cardholder statement. So if you have a specific need, feel free to reach out to us after the webinar, and we can take a look at your particular requirement.
Okay. I think we had a question come in as to what vendor name appears on the customer credit card statement. Currently, we have a generic output. It'll say agent fee with Visa and MasterCard. Then we'll have the document number, and then it will have your DBA name, your doing business as name, as it is listed with ARC. and then the state in which you are located. It is in that portion of the statement, of the credit card statementing, that we have some flexibility. Say your DBA name is ABC Travel, but everybody owes you, or everybody knows you as Trips Incorporated. We can change that for you. So Trips Incorporated is what will be output to the credit card company and what will appear on the statement. All right, let's continue on.
Yeah, great.
Okay, and getting up here, sorry. And
we're going to do another poll.
Sorry, that's right. We got another poll question. Sorry about that. When selecting a merchant processor, what do you value most in a credit card processor? Transparent pricing, customer service, no holdbacks, / speed of getting funds. And to explain what holdbacks mean, that you process a large dollar transaction and the merchant processor holds back a portion of those funds until, for some period of time, until they're validated the validity of the charge, which I have heard happens. Knowledge of the travel business or assistance with chargebacks, and you can select all that apply. And again, we'll give you a couple minutes, or excuse me, a minute or so to respond.
And Alex, while we're waiting for
Sure.
some of these responses, a question did come back, and I don't think you covered it, but maybe you're going to in your slides to come. But is there a limit? Is there a limit beyond the $10,000 limit in the GDS? Is there is that kind of always the ceiling, or
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yes, that is kind of an interesting story, and you'll get a little bit of a history lesson, probably more than you want to know on this. Yes, that is always the case, and that is derived from the fact that TAF transactions ride on the rails of the ARC settlement system with airline. They flow through our system just like an airline ticket, and these fields that accommodate airline tickets and the commissions associated with them, I believe, were all written up in the 1960s. And at that time, nobody envisioned a day where there would be a commission greater than $9,999.99 on an airline ticket. Thus, if you were to do a $25,000 service fee transaction, you would be getting $24,000 and some change as your commission on that TAF transaction, and simply doesn't fit in the field, and it would error out. So anyway, you can thank the developers, the long since retired developers from the 1960s for that limitation.
Great. No, thanks, Alex. And we're going to close the poll now. It looks like a good percentage have weighed in, and then we're going to share the results here.
Okay. Let's take a look at this. Got to put my glasses back on. All right. Transparent pricing. Yeah, I would expect that would be important. Assistance with chargebacks as well. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Thank you very much for participating.
Great. Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's dig into what to expect from a typical merchant provider. We had some fun with editing the slide when we initially put it together. I think we initially had it. What do you expect from a merchant service provider? And we were thinking, we went kind of down a dark path on that, where what people expect regarding poor customer service when dealing with financial institutions. So we changed it to just what to expect from a merchant provider. So we're going to give you what our knowledge is, based on our knowledge and experience with working with MSPs, merchant service providers. And the first thing everybody talks about and asks about fees, and you bet you can expect fees from an MSP. Generally, there'll be sign-up fees and termination fees, terminal fees, monthly minimums. If you have chargebacks, there'll be chargeback fees. PCI compliance fees. That's PCI is payment card industry, and processing fees. Regarding the the PCI fee thing, ARC, considering its position in the industry, we are required to be PCI compliant. We have to undergo a rather extensive annual PCI audit, and TAF is covered under that umbrella, and thus we don't feel it necessary to pass on PCI fees to our users to offset the expense of that audit. And I believe Joey may jump in on this at some point. He has some experience with PCI fees as a line item, revenue line item from his previous business. Do you want to get to that later, or?
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Okay, sounds good.
Next slide.
Okay. Payments, obviously you're processing credit cards, you're going to expect to get paid for what you're processing, and you can expect those funds to roll in days or weeks later, depending on what you're doing. And holdbacks, again, that's not something we do generally. Obviously, if we identify fraud, we'll grab the transaction. But I have talked to agents at trade shows who were processing with other merchant providers, and one agent in particular told me that he'd run a $6,000 transaction through his MSP, and several days later he got paid $3,000 and received an email letting him know the balance of that would be coming in about 60 days when they validated that the transaction was not going to be charged back. And obviously he needed that $6,000 to pay various suppliers associated with that particular vacation package, and he was perturbed, to put it mildly. But again, that's not something we require. Generally, you can expect to be asked for a bond or a letter of credit, some sort of financial guarantee to protect against potential losses, and monthly minimum requirements. Again, it's not something we require. You may use TAF as much or as little as you like, but other processors will require that you put through a minimum amount of money on a monthly basis.
Great. Alex, and before we move on to the next slide, this kind of parlays off the other question in regards to limits. This one is obviously, is there a monthly limit for processing?
A monthly, like, maximum?
Yeah.
For agents that are processing TAF transactions through their GDS, no. Our Agent's Choice web-based application does have a weekly aggregate limit of $25,000, but we do have flexibility there. We can increase it as you need. There are some steps to go through on doing that that our risk management team can assist you with. But I guess the short answer is no, probably, if you're processing through a GDS.
Okay, great. And before we move on,
sure.
Here's another sort of threshold limit question. For refunds and chargebacks, is there like a threshold for what can be refunded, or?
No, you can.
Obviously, chargeback, that's out of your control.
Well, yeah, yes. Just to clarify regarding chargebacks, ARC doesn't charge anything back. If a chargeback occurs, it's because the customer or the credit card company themselves have generated a chargeback. They've reversed the transaction and debited ARC, in which case then we have to debit the travel agent. But the other portion of that limits on refunds. You can, if you have a TAF transaction that you've issued through us, you can refund 100% of it. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Alex. Okay, we'll move on.
Okay. And here we've got this. This is an actual merchant statement that was sent in to us. This is not a mock-up. It's a rather interesting behind-the-scenes look at a business that was promised interchange plus pricing. They signed up for interchange pricing of 72 basis points. That's basically 0.72% plus 10 cents a transaction. But as you see, if you do all the math, they're actually paying 4.5% on the transaction. And Joey, coming from this relatively recent addition to the ARC team here, came from a business where they had this sort of broken out pricing. You want to speak to this a bit?
Yeah, so I would start off by saying that this is not going to be your typical statement, but these are out there. I would say it's not out of the realm of possibility for someone to think that they're getting a good rate if they're on an interchange plus or interchange pass-through model, which might be what you hear out there in the industry. And the 72 basis points and 10 cents, it sounds great. You know, I know it almost sounds like I'm getting a flat rate price, but when you really dig into it, there's all these additional fees at the bottom of the statement around network fees and program fees. Again, we talked already a little bit about PCI program and PCI non-compliance fees. So these are just things that you really want to be aware of when you know, whether you're working, if you're using ARC or if you're using another merchant service provider, right? You want to be aware of how these fees can add up, right? A lot of these fees are based on the volume that you process, not necessarily a flat rate like the 10 cents would be. Another thing that you can see on here is all the individual transaction fees related to the per item transactions, right? These are related to gateway fees potentially. So if you're using a third-party gateway as an example that might be, you know, connected to your website or what have you, or your mobile app, there's going to be additional gateway fees that would be applied on top of that. So just things that you want to be aware of. And again, the best way to really know what you're paying is to really look at the total amount of fees that was deducted from your account, all in, transaction fees, statement fees, and whatnot, and then divide that by the total funds deposited, and that sort of gives you your true effective rate of what you were processing. And sometimes that might not be what you think you're getting. So, you know, just something to be aware when you're dealing with your typical merchant service provider, and you know, again, something that you don't necessarily have to do with ARC, as we sort of have a flat rate price. So just to give you an idea, well, I'm going to kick it back over to Alex so you can kind of get an idea of what you can expect in dealing with TASF.
All right. Thank you, Joseph. Let's head on to the next slide here. Okay, with TASF, like we said, we had flat rate pricing, and we stand behind that. It's 3.5% or 70 cents. It's not 3.5 plus 70. Basically, at $20, 3.5% and 70 cents are one and the same. So any transaction less than $20 is assessed a flat fee of 70 cents. Anything at 20 or above is processed at 3.5%. So, and the way that flows through your ARC report, you are receiving, say you run a $100 transaction, you're getting a commission on that. Is the way that is processed in your ARC report. It looks like a commission of $96.50. We do have a quarterly subscription fee of $27.99. That only applies if you're actively using the product within the quarter. If you are a small business or just sporadically access TASF, then you would just sporadically be charged this fee. If you go a quarter without using it, we're not going to charge you. Like to make the gym membership analogy, the gym still charges your credit card even though you haven't been there in months. So we don't do that basically. It's only if you're active within the quarter. And then the other potential fee is a chargeback fee of $25 per chargeback. But again, that's only if you get a chargeback. And as I alluded to earlier, most agents don't get those, or if they do, it's with exceedingly rare. Also, PCI, settlement fees, network access fees, statement fees, association fees, dues, assessments, etc. We don't charge those. It's all baked in. Our margins all baked into our flat rate of 3.5%. We don't nickel and dime you on that. Also, there's no cancellation or early termination fees and no sign-up fees. So you may start using it, you may stop using it whenever you like, and there's no other expense associated with that. Let's continue on here. Now we're going to heading back to our original agenda, talking about the chargeback portion of the show. I'm going to kick you over to our business operator, TASF Operations Manager, Sherry Simmons. But I think she's got a poll question for you first.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sherry Simmons. I am the supervisor of the TASF Operations, and we're going to start with our last poll question. Generally, how many days do you have to respond to a Visa MasterCard chargeback before it's closed in the cardholder's favor? 16 days, 30 days, 60 days, or 91 days? If you can make your selection now.
That's a good question.
I did see a question about chargebacks and the timeline that we are given. Just so you know that ARC does not set the timeline for responding to a chargeback. That is made solely by the card brand. We do try to, when we're sending out the notices, give enough time for you all to respond to us so we can then respond to whatever card brand that issues the chargeback. We do process chargebacks daily, and we do now offer email notices versus sending them out U.S. mail. So if anyone on the phone is interested in receiving them via email, all you need to do is just send an email to the TASF mailbox, and that's TASF@arccorp.com. Include your ARC number and the email address or addresses you would like to sign up. And that can be done immediately. So we're going to give a couple more minutes for our poll.
Yeah, we'll give a couple more seconds.
Second, 5 minutes, sorry.
So that we can get all your information in this afternoon. Sherry, I'm just going to go ahead and close this now. Is that okay?
Fine.
Awesome. And then we'll share the results.
The actual answer is 30 days. It's not, I know it feels like it's 16 days, but it's really 30.
Great.
Okay, so we're going to start with best practices for chargebacks and how to prevent them. When actually there's not a 100% remedy for preventing a chargeback, other than not accepting credit cards, and we know that you all cannot not accept credit cards. But what we can do is be transparent with your customer on the charges that they're going to see, if they're going to see 2 charges or if they're going to see that one, and where that charge is going to come from. As far as refunding a chargeback, if you receive a chargeback from us, we do not recommend that you issue a refund for a chargeback, because that would be simply giving your customer a credit twice. Because they're going to get a credit from the chargeback itself and also from the refund when you process it. If you receive a chargeback from a client, from one of your clients, I would say contact them just to get some clarity. Sometimes the customer forgets that charge is going to come through, or maybe don't recognize it. So if you give them a quick call, they recognize they made a mistake, they can then contact the issuer of their card and withdraw the chargeback. Then that chargeback will then get reversed back to you. When a chargeback is reversed back to the travel agent, we do include the $25 chargeback fee. We do not keep that. We do return that to the travel agency. If you receive a chargeback notice from us, it is always very important to look at the reason code. And that reason code is printed on each notice. It also gives a description of that reason code. And please try to send in the supporting documentation that is around that reason code. So I don't need all of the ins and outs of a transaction. If it's a refund not processed reason, just let us know why a refund is not due to that customer. And also include your terms and conditions. That would be great. We can move on to the next slide. Oh, I don't have a next slide. I will now turn it over to Joseph.
Thanks, Sherry. So I just want to take a few minutes and kind of talk about where we're headed with TASF. I think you guys got a pretty good overview of where we are today and sort of how it compares to other merchant providers. And obviously, Sherry's team does a great job in helping our customers with their chargebacks and whatnot. So I know we had a couple questions about some APIs, and we had some card reader questions, which are all great feedback. So So this is just sort of what we're going to do with TAP over the next few years, right? We're looking at, increasing that transaction limit, right? I think the $10,000 transaction limit is something that we've heard from customers that is sort of limiting their business. And it, unfortunately, as it stands today, is sort of hard-coded in our systems in the way they work. But with advancements in our settlement system and advancements in what we're looking to do with TAP, we're looking to lift those limitations and those barriers on the platform. We are looking to add, We are looking to add a few other enhancements to the product as well around the settlement window. I think I saw a question in there around it takes too long for the funds sometimes to settle. I think we do have customers who have expressed some challenges with how long it takes for those funds to be deposited. And again, through some of the enhancements we want to make to the overall platform, we're going to reduce that window. We don't necessarily have timelines for some of these enhancements yet, but the feedback that we have received is pretty clear, and these are sort of the functions that we want to add into the product to make that better for you guys. A couple of the things that we're going to be doing is our Agent's Choice product. Alex mentioned that we do have an Agent's Choice web portal that a lot of our VTCs currently use today. And we do understand that the majority of the volume that we see on TAF today is processed through the GDSs, simply because of the ease of use and the integration and how all that works. But we do find that the Agent's Choice is going to be sort of our payments hub for future functionality. Again, that's where we would connect a card reader to. If we wanted to add any sort of enhanced reporting, fraud prevention tools, any sort of chargeback management portal, all of that is going to be added over the next few years into Agent's Choice to help make your payment processing with ARC easier. And of course, finally, I think somebody again mentioned APIs. And we are looking at adding some APIs. We are currently in pre-production on the API. And some of the future enhancements of what we're going to be adding that are not yet available is sort of around some fraud prevention with address and CVV validation, tokenization, some user-defined fields, potentially adding credits. So if you wanted to credit a transaction directly through the API, that would be available to you. And we are looking, sort of exploring the idea of adding different currency types, sort of outside the US, and maybe even adding ACH. Let's go ahead and real quick to the next slide. And just getting in a little bit more around the API itself. As I mentioned, we are in pre-production. The API is being launched on a enterprise API platform through MuleSoft, which I think some of you might know is owned by Salesforce. It's obviously all using pretty industry standard REST API protocols. The current functionality allows you to run an authorization. You can void that authorization, and then you can look up transaction history. A lot of this functionality piggybacks on the Agent's Choice infrastructure. So transactions would still continue to settle through the IAR and the traditional ARC settlement process. But we are looking at potentially expanding the product to be able to settle outside of the ARC settlement process. So adding that flexibility depending on what the agency needs and what works best for them. Some primary use cases that we've seen thus far, again, processing outside of your GDS, and a lot of NDC aggregators have already sort of reached out to us asking how it works and how they might be able to add that functionality into their NDC solution. Again, so that is in pre-production. If anyone on the phone would like any information about that, please feel free to reach out to us at the end of the webinar. We're going to have some contact information for everybody. And again, this API was the result of direct feedback that came from our customers. So, we welcome that feedback. It's what drives our product. So, I just wanted to personally thank everybody for attending today, and I'll kick it back over to Alex for some final thoughts.
Okay, thank you very much, Joseph. We go back. There we go. All right, just remember, obviously, you have options when processing credit cards. TAF is not the only game in town, but if you are in the market for credit card processing, we're certainly here to assist you. And it's exceptionally important is when evaluating a processor and looking at the fees. As we saw in that statement earlier, you can't go by what you were promised. You need to look at your all-in expense with a merchant processor, all fees, add it all up, add up all your expenses, and as Joseph said, divide that by what you process, and that is your true cost to process. Don't panic about chargebacks. We've got an excellent team here to assist you. But as I believe is the case, chargebacks for the average agent are a rarity. But should you get one, we can help. And despite the fact that we called it TASF, which stands again for Travel Agency Service Fees, it's not just for travel agency service fees. It's for all travel-related charges. When we launched it, that's what we thought agents were going to be using it for almost exclusively, but agents have shown us how best to use this product, what they need it for. And for sure, they need it for fees, but they need it for any and all travel-related charges. As you know, we're the financial cornerstone of the travel industry. We know your business. We are here to assist travel agents. So what's good for travel agents is good for ARC. So we want to do what we can to assist you. With TAP transactions, you always know what you're going to net, what's going to go into your bank account. With other processors, depending on the type of card being tendered, that amount can vary. If you have a large dollar transaction and you have a thin margin, you need to know how much is going to be coming into your pocket, and that can vary if it's a bank issued debit card, or if it's a travel rewards card like the one I've got in my pocket that somebody's getting miles or points for. Those miles and points are not free, and the merchant ultimately pays the expense on that. So, but with the TAP product, you always know what you're going to be getting on your transactions. We're one solution with a couple, currently several ways to access it, mostly through the GDS, but also you can run transactions through Agent's Choice, and as Joseph said, coming soon, the API. Thoroughly believe travel agents are actually travel professionals, and need to get paid for the services that you're providing, and you provide time, expertise, advice, and resources. My family and I my wife and 2 daughters went to Germany for 2 weeks last year, and you can believe me, I used a travel agent. I'd been there before, but we were going to a lot of places I hadn't been, and I wanted to use a lady I knew that had traveled extensively through Germany, and she was able to set us up in some excellent hotels that I probably would not have identified on my own. And I was very happy, one, to pay her that $400, and two, not to have to spend an entire Saturday researching my vacation. I was able to go out and do something else and let her do it for me. So I will pay to free up my Saturday, and I know other people will as well. And we have a thorough understanding of the payments business and of travel, and we want to leverage that knowledge for your benefit. And just some quotes we've heard over the years from people that have used our product. Leave these up here for a second. You can take a look at those. I think I've read enough to you today. Let's advance. And can we go back one? Sure. And some resources about the product and how you can get in touch with us. The TAF at ArcCorp email address there at the bottom. Primarily Sherry and her team access that, but you can reach me there as well. And there is I may regret this. There are a lot of people on this call, but that's my telephone number and my email address. And feel free to reach out to me. Keep in mind, there are a lot of people on this call, so be patient as I'm getting back to you. But yes, we will get back to you one way or the other. So.
Great. Thanks, Alex.
Sure.
Thanks, Joseph. Thanks, Sherry. You guys have been an awesome panel. We do have quite a few questions that have come in. I'm going to try to get to most of these for you guys to be able to answer. The ones that we don't get to, we will answer those individually. So here's one that's come in. do we contact our GDS to get the format for processing TAF or via the GDS? I've started using Agent's Choice. So how does that work? If they're using Agent's Choice, which is web-based,
yes.
Is there a format that's required, or can you talk about that, Alex?
Well, there's not a format specifically for Agent's Choice that's required. You simply log in. If you're ARC accredited, you have a MyARC account. You access that from ARC's website. You log into MyARC, and on the left side of the screen is a section called Your Tools, or maybe it's My Tools. It's something like that. There is a line item there. It says Agent's Choice. You click on that, it'll launch. If it's the very first time you've ever gone into that, there's some terms and conditions you need to agree to. But then you're just creating transactions in there, which are dropping. Those will automatically drop into your regular ARC report. If you're doing it through the GDS, it depends on your GDS, but there are some in the help pages. There should be some information. Should be some information in the help pages of your GDS that would tell you how to do that. If you're having trouble with that, why don't you reach out to us and we'll see what if we can dig up some information on the formats or the I believe it's called the mask on how to.
Right. And I think our customer care is first in some of that as well, Alex, aren't they? I know that they can help with a lot of that formatting questions.
Correct. Actually, if you need to contact us, it's probably best to reach out to ARC's Customer Care Center. They have a whole call center down there that can assist with those types of problems, or excuse me, those types of questions. Yeah.
Yeah, and they can be reached via email at ccchelp@arccorp.com or by calling 855-816-8003. So feel free for any of the information here that are after you leave here today. If you still have questions, you can contact our customer care or the resources that Alex provided, but you might want to try that customer care as the first resource, and then they will get distributed to Alex or Sherry or Joseph, depending on the type of question. So just keep that in mind. We're here on many different levels to help assist you with this product. Let me just see what else has come in here. Again, there's been a few. Some of them are overlapped, so just bear with me as I go through some of these. Joseph, there's some stuff for the future, I think you see. Can you center the fields and Agent's Choice?
Yeah.
So there's some stuff that may be helpful as you gather your requirements for moving forward.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of nice backlog items in here for us. I'll tell you, there's one question in here about a timeline for the API. I can tell you it is available today. It is in pre-production, so if anyone would like access to that, we're more than happy to get you in there. So you can test that out and see if that's going to fit your needs, and of course provide feedback. So feel free to reach out to any of the the contact information here on the screen, and we'll be happy to assist you with that. Agent's Choice, it did just recently go through a rebranding, so we are still continuing to look at how to evolve that product. So they'll look for more enhancements in the future. But again, if there's specific requests around centering fields or access or how things are showing up, definitely reach out to us and provide that feedback. I mean, those types of things drive our backlog, so happy to do that.
Okay, great. Yeah, so if anybody, before we close out the webinar this afternoon, has any of those types of things that might be helpful to Joseph and his TASF team, please just write those in, because this information is captured, and that will be really helpful for them as they move forward. Here's a question. I don't know if it was answered during the session, but I'm going to just pick it out here. That says, they may have missed it, but what information gets passed through like back office systems, such as a TRAMS, or there's various back office systems agents use, and does it tie the charge to the ticket? Because that was another question that was asked earlier.
Yes.
If a TAP transaction comes through ARC, does the airline know that that's been charged for that ticket, and how much that would be? So a couple.
The airline's not going to know anything about your TAP transaction, but your back office system should tie the two transactions together by way of the PNR. If you're running you run an airline ticket and then you're running a service fee immediately after it, it's going to, this should be on the same PNR, and it should have all the same information tied together within your back office system.
Okay, great, because I think that's always a concern with agents. Does an airline know what, if they're charging a service fee? So that's good to know.
No, the airline, correct. The airline has no idea what you're charging or how much you're charging.
I think it'd be important to clarify that that's when transactions are processed through the GDS. If it's processed through the API or the agent's choice, that may not be the case in terms of the back office reconciliation.
Good to know. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I saw one question up. Could you repeat the CCC's telephone number?
Yeah, I was going to go.
Okay.
I was going to go over all the resource information before we close out, and I will do that. We have a few more minutes. I was going to try to squeak in another question or two, and I'll repeat all the resource information before we close out here today. So just let me see what else might be important for. Do you have a credit card verification to protect against fraud? So if they're, using service fee program, I don't think there's any guarantee with fraud on any level that of getting a chargeback or anything like that.
Correct.
Correct.
We are exploring the idea of putting some additional fraud prevention tools around Agent's Choice and the API. Obviously, ARC does not own the GDS software. So making enhancements to that GDS software is something that would be a little bit more of a long-term play or opportunity that we would have to work with the GDS on. But of the products that we have control over, which is Agent's Choice and the API, we are looking at potentially adding some fraud prevention or fraud monitoring tools to that would not necessarily remove the fraud entirely, but maybe score it or allow you the opportunity to potentially void it if you felt like it didn't meet a certain criteria for you to accept that risk. So nothing available today, obviously, but we're working on making those enhancements.
And Joseph, I think you didn't give a definitive, but some of the questions coming up are, is there a timeline? Would it be this year? Would it be more next year for those APIs? Do you guys have a guesstimate on what that roadmap looks like? For the
API is available today. Again, it is in pre-production, so if you want access to that, just let us know. Some of the other enhancements that we talked about today are roadmap for probably the next 18 months. I don't know if I can share our entire roadmap, but I'd be happy to provide as much detail as I can in terms of what we're targeting. Obviously, with competing priorities, things have to shift sometimes, but everything we mentioned today is on our backlog and is on our roadmap, and we are driving forward to make those a reality.
Great, thank you. Alex, I think you covered this, but it's come up a couple of times. What really reads on the merchant statement in regards to, the question is, could it read anything besides agent fees?
No. Well, on Visa and MasterCard, we have precious little real estate to work with. I believe we had 11 characters with Visa and 9 characters with MasterCard. So we've got agent fee, then the document number of the service fee transaction, and then the agency's DBA name. With American Express, we have travel service fee, or
travel agent services.
Travel agent services, okay, is what appears on American Express. And then again, with the document number and your DBA, doing business as name, as it is listed with ARC. And I've seen lots of different things. I've seen at least that amount of information appear on the Amex statement. It can vary depending on the type of Amex card that the cardholder is using. So there you go.
Okay, great, Alex.
Sure.
And I just want to give, again, a big thank you to Joseph and your team, Alex and Sherry, for being on our panel this afternoon and providing information on TAF and Agent's Choice. They will be doing another webinar moving forward, especially as some of these things that Joseph talked about that's happening in the future. So be on the lookout for those invitations. You can always look in our weekly tag, of course, and it will show when our webinars are coming up. I do want to repeat the customer care information. I think that's sometimes the best line, the first line of communication if you don't really know if it's something specific to TAF or not, but that is, the email is ccchelp ARCcorp, ARCcorp.com. That phone number is 855-816-8003, and it'll give you various options to press. However, if you still feel that you want to reach out to the TASF team, right on the slide here, under the contact, it's TASF@arccorp.com, or Alex and his phone and email are there. If you have any other questions regarding our stuff, you can always contact me, jhoward@arccorp.com, and I'll be happy to get back to you. We have another interesting sort of payment webinar coming up at the end of July, which will have our Director of Payment Operations, which is Jennifer Watkins. She's fresh off our credit card payments forum that happened down in Tampa this month. So look for information on that. We have Delta coming up in July. We have our fraud month with about 10 different fraud sessions with multiple vendors being offered in September. Don't forget our Travel Connect comes up in October 2nd and 3rd, and you can register for all of that on our ArcCorp/Travel Connect. So thanks again, really a big thank you for our panel. Thank you for everyone for taking the time to join us this afternoon, and we look forward to having you join us in the future. Thanks, bye now.